Dear The Simpsons. I haven't known a world without you, and for that fact, I consider myself amongst the luckiest. Perhaps it's the closeness of our ages and the simultaneity with which we came up in the world, but it is with you that I feel the strongest connection amongst any other mid-90s sitcom. Truthfully, it wasn't until the 4th grade that your consequence became apparent. Like the gummy Venus, you were made all the more sweet and significant by your interdiction, and so, prevailingly, let me thank you for being a cartoon, but not, such that your presence in my home was not forbidden. Or alternatively, thank you to my parents for not anticipating that my encounters with the quotidian escapades of a family drawn in yellow would certainly contribute to my delinquency. I'm unsure if it was at the lunch table or recess or after school at the public library or pizza place, but rest assured it was in some stereotypical mid-90s suburban setting that my friends and I would dissect and recall ad infinitum your depictions of stereotypical mid-90s suburban settings. I shudder to think how often employees of Casabella Pizza were subjected to orders for poison pizza. But such is the state of one in love, unconcerned with the opinions of others, rather only with the celebration of their own intense infatuation. Significantly, in our public celebration, my friends and I discovered a method for expressing not only our fondness for you, but for each other. Intimate knowledge of your characteristics and details, of which there are a countless number, signaled a devotion to the social fabric uniting us. If you could turn to someone and say, "It's such a beautiful day," and they'd respond with, "I think I go out the window," you knew that they were part of the family. As teenaged boys, this is the closest we'd ever come to expressing the true objects of our affections. Each other. It was primarily through the coded consumption of popular media, you chief amongst it, that we signaled our reliance on and willingness to sacrifice for one another. Glaven. Springfield, by design and probably a little bit by accident, showed us much about our own small town. Transformed from the mundane to some bizarre and occasionally threatening landscape by the anxieties of adolescence. Nothing you regularly depicted was normal because normal doesn't exist. Normal is a lie invented by politicians and jerks to help them sleep at night. And this was a thing that we needed to understand. Desperately. Your authority figures, your Chief Wiggum, your Monty Burns, Prince Gipple Sinner, and Super Nintendo Chalmers, though vested with power, suffered their own significant shortcomings. They were fallible and human. And so my own teachers, coaches, and directors came into focus as multidimensional people who wielded the power they had, not because of that power's benefits, but sometimes in spite of it. You show family life as boring, complicated, exciting, uplifting, but never ordinary, because it never is. Yours is a refutation of the simply moralistic family life. Sometimes it's downright tragic. Even Lisa, arguably the most normal character, is shown constantly navigating the tension between the expectations that she has for herself and the reality of her wacky home life and family, whom she loves very much. You watch her navigate and embrace those tensions because she has to, because that's what life is, navigating and embracing these tensions. Bart, the proud underachiever, is disdainful of strict suburban standards. Knowing that he isn't and will never be the perfect middle-class older brother allows him to cherish his shortcomings, though there are still plenty of warnings about what would happen were he to deify them. And I've tried to remain mindful of this, to find this within myself. What am I really? Not what perfect thing do I want to try to fit into. I work to accept my shortcomings, but not gild them. They're not prizes to be celebrated, they're features of the landscape to navigate around. Your media elite are incompetent, confused, or con artists, flying by the seat of their pants, completely oblivious or operating on some very thinly veiled agenda. You damn every cultural institution, politics, religion, media, family, as an effort of haphazard, though purposeful manipulation by people just barely in control. And in so doing, you implicitly and courageously damn yourself. Your honesty was empowering. That is, until it became performance. Where I went to college, there was one TV with cable. Actually, it was satellite, so I don't even know if it got local channels. YouTube and Hulu were but twinklings of inspiration in the dreams of some programmer, and so when I said goodbye to my parents and my hometown, I also said goodbye to you, The Simpsons, and the 11 to 21 times per week that I would watch you on broadcast. And as tends to be the case, upon graduating college, the world looked different, and you were no exception. Whatever bath of pop culture mundanity you had dipped a toe into in the early aughts had provided full submersion by my graduation. Your sharp insights had become dull simulations, your incisive observations lazily rearranged tropes. The Simpsons which greeted me was not nearly the one that I left behind, and as my affections quickly faded like swans for Odette, they became like a malady. In our rendezvous, I would struggle to recognize you, like Swan, with the painful and continuous anxiety which dwelt in my mind. I stand by, confidently, that it is better to have Simpsoned and lost than to have never Simpsoned at all. Jack Gilbert writes in The Great Fires that love does not last, but it is different from the passions that do not last. Love lasts by not lasting. And so it's my hope that whatever serendipities of time and access and interest allowed me to cross your path exist otherwise today for other people and other pieces of media, such that they can know the important and powerful, continuous anxiety of a media love that lasts by not lasting. And I hope that whenever you experience your final throes of widely recognized relevancy, whenever they are, your grander significance is not overshadowed by your late shortcomings. This is what we want and how we worry for the things we love. That they are remembered well, and that they are celebrated the way we each might celebrate them at their best. If it were my choice, I would choose that for you, The Simpsons. Sincerely, Mike Rugnetta. Let us know in the comments what media you love. And if you love Idea Channel, please subscribe. Lol, IDK. Let's see what you guys had to say about the internet and dialects. alexisisnotacar writes about how internet dialects might also be described as registers, which is another way of describing a particular use of language in a certain social setting and a way of self-identifying using it. And I think, yeah, this makes perfect sense to me and also relates to a lot of other comments I saw, specifically ones about jargon, which I always think of being very technical in nature and not necessarily about self-identification and community membership, though that is certainly a factor, and slang, which I always think of as being very informal, which, yeah, is also a facet of all of this, like formality versus informality. So, yeah, this is a great comment. Links to this one and all the others in the doobly-doo. MagicalDragontamer talks about TV tropes and how there is a certain manner of speech that has developed there because of the necessity to refer to what are slightly more complicated concepts with frequency, and uses YMMV or your mileage may vary as an example of this. And this is a thing that always struck me as being really fun and interesting about TV tropes, is this kind of compressed style of speaking where there's still lots of information and lots of high concept, but it's boiled down into these much smaller units, which I, probably for obvious reasons, really enjoy. So, yeah. TheJaredtheJaredlong offers YouTube comments as a possible home for general American internet version, and Cian counters that might be true of every very popular website. And this makes me think of two things. The first being that, like we said in the video, it's always a little complicated to say that every user on a website behaves in a certain way, but that also, because a website is so popular and is such a constant part of our media consumption, it's really easy, I think, to lose track of what characteristics are novel. It's like that saying, we don't know who discovered water, but you can bet it wasn't a fish. I think that applies here. Eric Vilas and Rieja Thornton point out that there aren't just website speech communities, but there are also fandom-specific speech communities, and even go so far as to write comments that are kind of a performance of code switching between those two communities, and it's so good. Also, I really want to hang out on the K-pop fandom internet. It sounds like a great place. And speaking of code switching, Ilmari Thornton brings up code switching as a very important aspect of communicating to different communities, even though you are one person. And then that is what this is called. When you communicate in a different way to different places, you are code switching, which is a thing we talked about, just not by name, which was silly that I didn't say code switching. That's what it is. Creatrix Tiara points out that this video made it onto Metafilter, which is very exciting because the conversation there is always really good. So if you want to see what the people on Metafilter have to say about internet dialects, link in the doobly-doo. Shanti de Ruyter, whose name I'm sure I'm destroying, so I want to apologize, Shanti, writes a really great comment about friend groups needing shorthand for shared experiences, and that this is maybe one reason that speech communities develop online, and that you still need to do this, but you are effectively doing it in a public space. So your shorthand for a shared experience is shared with, you know, effectively a ton of people in a very large room. And I think that this is one of the really exciting things about communicating with large communities and groups online. You kind of get into this, that it's, you know, you can experience this excitement of belonging with a person based upon understanding like a piece of shorthand or a reference that they're making, even though you've never met them, and that they are halfway across or all the way across the world. You can still feel that. You can still feel like you are in a group together, and that's, you know, it's fun. Yay, internet, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. This week's episode was brought to you by the hard work of these perfectly cromulent individuals. We have a Facebook and IRC and a subreddit, links in the doobly-doo, and the tweets of the week come from Uncreative Cat, who links us to an Esquire piece about the ever-changing accent and the sort of embodiment of code switching, and gentrification, who links us to an article about the uncovering of a global super dialect via Twitter, which is just crazy. And I also spoke with Ray from The Daily Dot about our dialects episode, so we'll put a link to that in the doobly-doo as well. And for this week's record swap, we are not actually going to be swapping a record. We only have two left. It's The Highwaymen, which you probably can't even see, and A Sword and Sorcery, which I really want to make sure that we replace with something really good. So I'm feeling like a lot of pressure to get it right, and I'm feeling a little paralyzed. So if you have any suggestions, I would love to hear them.